My name is Una Fogarty, class of 1990. Welcome to the second Kenyon Women Giving Back event. We are so fortunate to have all of you with us for this unique opportunity that celebrates and honors the many ways Kenyon women give back to Knox County. I, along with the other women on the KWGB Steering Committee, hope this series will help build a deep connection with Kenyon women across the generations, because we are such a cool group of ladies and we have a lot to share. I am also delighted to announce that the committee has committed nearly $40,000 to a matching funds program to support the Kenyon Women's Scholarship. More details on this after our main event. I would like to introduce our moderator this evening, Jan Thomas. Jan is the Senior Advisor for Community Relations at Kenyon. She specializes in health and gender issues and previously served as Associate Provost for the college, as well as a Professor of Sociology and Gender Studies. Jan's current work with the Office of Community Partnership fosters collaboration between Kenyon and the Knox County community. Jan?
Jan, I think you're muted.
That's not a good way to start for the moderator. All right, but I guess I had to do it once at least, so we got that out of the way. Thank you, Una. I'll try this again. I really am delighted to be moderating this conversation tonight and to see how many people were interested in hearing about these amazing Kenyon women who are creating change in their local community. I'm also happy to see some names on the alumni list that I know and former students. So again, welcome, and it's great to see your names and have you in attendance tonight. So before we get going, just a few housekeeping things. You all are muted. You're supposed to be muted. I was supposed to get off of mute, but you're all muted and you will stay muted throughout the conversation, but don't worry, you will have a chance to ask questions. We will do questions at the end, and you are welcome to use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen, or the chat, submit questions in the chat function as well. And so Annie and her team will be moderating those for me, and we will get to as many questions as we can as we get further into the evening. So again, thank you all for being here, and let's get started. Tonight, as I said, we're going to focus on Kenyon women who are creating change at the local level. And I am delighted to introduce this panel, and I am basically going to do that by asking them to tell you a little bit about their background and where they are currently working and what that looks like in their day-to-day lives. So I'm going to start tonight, I think, with Tamata Parsons. Tamata, would you please be our first to introduce yourself this evening?
Thank you, Jan, and thank you all for the invitation to participate in such an amazing event. It's an honor to be invited and to be among so many of the wonderful friends. I see a lot of familiar faces and people that inspired me as a Kenyon woman, and people that I've worked with and colleagues and comrades, as I like to say, in the journey along the way. So I'm Tamata Parson. Many of my Kenyon friends knew me as Tammy, so it's okay if you refer to me in that way. I'm not offended, but after I grew up, I took on my formal real name, and so I do prefer to be called Tamata, and it sounds like you say tomato, I say Tamata, if that helps. I'm class of 93, which is an honor, and I see Jan Gunlock. Hi, Jan, from our class of 93. I was a sociology major. I thought about, and also a sociology major with a concentration in American studies. So at that time, there wasn't a major or a minor in American studies, but I was a concentration in American studies. It's difficult to even sort of start, because where do I start? I have so many cross combinations between Kenyon, but basically I'll start with saying that I grew up in Knox County. I was literally born almost at Kenyon. My father's Roland Parson, class of 71. He was the first president of the Black Student Union, and he and my mother lived here on campus while I was a baby. And my mother is Karen Sheffield. Some of you knew her as Karen Sheffield Jordan. She was one of the, I like to say, the founding folks who invented and created and developed the Career Development Office with Barbara Gensimer, who was also a huge influence to me. My mother worked at Kenyon for 38 years, and she is now retired. I have also, my uncle is Rick Sheffield, as most of you know. Some of you know him. I like to think he's famous. I always thought he was famous even when I was a little kid. And then also my Aunt Ellen, who is an extraordinary artist in her own right. So those are sort of my foundational things. And because I was a child of Knox County, growing up as a faculty brat, as we called ourselves back in those days, I have Kenyon as literally as my playground as a child. So it was the quintessential place to go to college. In my head, this is what all colleges were like and that they should be like. So I was blessed and fortunate enough to graduate from Mount Vernon High School and be among a group of us from Mount Vernon who actually wound up going to Kenyon and graduating from Kenyon. Knox County is really a part of who I am, and it really influenced and created the structures of what Kenyon meant to me. Kenyon was the first place that I had a chance to develop a lot of the skills that influenced what it meant to me to embody in my career and in my life as a parent and my life currently. I do also just want to have a chance to briefly say there are a lot of specifically women of color who came before me in Knox County who contributed to the abilities of not only me, but for a lot of people to thrive in Knox County and for a lot of the systems that are designed in Knox County, not only Dr. Alumnae Simmons, who many of you know about her story, which is very important. Jean Payne, who was the nurse here, in the first woman hired here at Kenyon, Black woman. And of course, Judge Patricia Wynn, who was a Kenyon parent. Tanya Booker is one of the finest women athletes in basketball ever to come from this area and to go out into the world and do great things. And of course, I'm a little bit biased in saying my mom, who really contributed to the culture at Kenyon. So I'm very proud, and I just wanted to have an opportunity to kind of put those names out there because it's very important to me in understanding how my development works. So primarily I've worked for 20 to 25 years in Knox County in social services and education, the privilege of working with my very good friend, Peg Tazewell at Knox County Head Start. I also worked for New Directions, which I actually started that career when I was a Kenyon student in a volunteer and in philanthropic opportunity. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. New Directions is very near and dear to my heart. But now I live in Columbus, Ohio, and Clintonville area. I have two boys that are going to college this fall. I love saying that out loud. And I work for an agency that's called Treca Digital Academy. And Treca is an online school that focuses primarily on students who are what we call at risk of dropping out of school. It's a K through 12 online program that existed before COVID as far as online, because it's for kids and families who struggle with being in a brick and mortar school and need another alternative. So as a social worker for that school, I do a lot of home visits. I do a lot of parent meetings. I do a lot of conversations and a lot of cheerleading to try and get our kids through school so that they can be successful. And that's me. So I'll pass it on to the next person. Thank you, Jan, for that opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Tamata. I think we will go to Lisa Schott next. Lisa, I'm going to use Tamata's language, which I like. So tell us a little about your foundations and then your work today.
Sure. Thanks, Jan. And I just want to say, especially because of COVID, just to see, even on the screen of my big gallery, just to see faces of some dear friends, some past colleagues, some current Philander Chase Conservancy board members. This is kind of emotional. So I'm just going to be looking at each of you as I'm talking. But briefly, I am Lisa Schott. I am a graduate of the class of 1980. I grew up in Cleveland and chose Kenyon back in the 70s, really, which we're going to talk later about through lines. but stepped foot on this campus and it was all over. I came because my mother thought Paul Newman was great, and she said he went to school in Ohio. So I'm glad she said that. It's ended up being my life now for 41 years, I guess, including student years. But after I graduated in 80, I was gone for about 5 years, came back in 85 to the alumni office and served in a number of different capacities in that office for 25 years. And then I think in my culminating career moment, thanks to John Nepper, who talked to Georgia Nugent at the time, my predecessor at the Philander Chase Conservancy was stepping down, and they asked me to lead the Philander Chase Conservancy back in 2010. So I have been here now for 12 years. And for those of you who don't know about the Conservancy, one of the reasons I'm so proud of Kenyon is they had the foresight back in the 80s, and they had a kind of a wake-up call to know that this rural area would not last forever. So they took the action of creating their own land trust. It's still the only college or university in the country that has its own land trust, and put us to the work of conserving in perpetuity land around Kenyon. So at this point, we have almost 6,000 acres in a 5-mile radius, conserved and conserved forever. So I'm getting ready to retire at the end of June, but planning to stay at this place I love and with so many people I love, and learn to get to know and love a lot of people because of a lot of good volunteer opportunities through my work and through extracurriculars. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Thanks, Lisa. And Peg Tazewell, please tell us a little introduction about yourself.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Peg Tazewell. I'm a native to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Grew up there in Philadelphia politics much of my life, and made a brief foray into theater where I met John Tazewell, class of '84, who is my husband and a Kenyon professor, and David Cottrell and a bunch of reprobates from the class of '89. I don't think I see any '89 folks there. But we all lived together in a house in Philly. I was told I would be a peep. I didn't know what that meant when I at that time. And John and I bounced around to Los Angeles and to North Carolina, and he was on the alumni council. And the first time I came to campus was on one of those gorgeous October days. And it was the old bookstore, and I spent the day in the bookstore and walking all around campus in this beautiful location, and just fell in love. And on the way home, we were driving back to North Carolina. I said, well, we could go there if you wanted for a little bit. And sure enough, Tom Turgeon and Harleen Marley asked him to come for a visiting position. And we came in 1997 for 2 years, and it's 2022 and we're still here. I had not finished college. I got pretty close, but I didn't finish. I was not letting school interfere with my education when I was in my early 20s. So I went back to Kenyon as a grown-up, which I highly recommend. I miss it terribly. I loved being in class with students. Kenyon students were almost always very generous to an older person. And at the time when I started, I had a 4-year-old, and you know, it just was a lovely, lovely time. And it took me a while to finish because life got in the way. I started working. My father was ill, but I graduated in 2003, and I started as Tamata said, American Studies. It was a synoptic major. That was my major, but it was a synoptic major. But then it took me so long to graduate that I was in the first class of actual American Studies graduates. So I'm really thankful for that time. While I was a student still, I joined Knox County Head Start, which is actually one of the original Head Start programs, second program funded in the state of Ohio. And interestingly enough, there were Kenyon faculty involved in the start of it. So Don Rogan was one of the original folks involved back in 1965. And Tom Gensimer as well was another board member. So, you know, there is a connection. When I became director 20 years ago, I found some articles from the 60s of Kenyan students teaching Head Start kids to swim. And I think there's always been a connection between Kenyon and Knox County Head Start since it was founded. I have a son who's class of 15. He followed his dad into the co-singers. So most of our friends, I feel like, are Cokes that continue at Kenyon, and I have a daughter who is a junior in high school, and where she goes remains to be seen. Interview with Kenyon on Saturday. Everybody wish that well.
Well, thank you. So thank you all so much. It's great to have that as our setting. And I think we all want to go back to Kenyon as adults now, I think, after all that. So that's very, very inspiring. So let's move on. Let's dig a little bit deeper now and think about what I'm going to call your through lines. As I said, careers aren't always linear, and you all have held several different positions, some in different agencies and organizations, and some of you have been at the same organization but had different positions. So I think, Peg, I think I'll start with you on this one. Talk to us about your through line. Is there something you learned at Kenyon or through your experiences at Kenyon as a student that's threaded through your career and maybe any volunteer work you do and maybe even any philanthropy?
You know, so I would say the first and probably to my work, most important thing I learned how to do was write much better at Kenyon. And I have, I think, Peter Rutkoff primarily to thank for that. And it's interesting because I've been doing my work for a long time, and I write our organization's grants and make presentations. And often people are surprised at how thorough my data is. And how prepared I am. And I always find that a little curious because, of course, you would not have gone into a presentation at Kenyon without having your ducks in a row. So I think that's really important. And then, you know, probably to be a little sappy, the first campaign that occurred when we were living here, it was when Rob O'Dean was president of Kenyon, and the theme of it was learning in the company of friends. And I really do feel like that defines what's important in my work. You have to be a lifelong learner in the world in general, but especially I feel like in my work, because as soon as you really learn how things go, something changes. We're dealing with federal regulations and state regulations, and child development is evolving. You know, what we know about trauma now, we didn't know 20 years ago. And so being able to be in community with people in my work, in learning, being able to be in community with people in Knox County, Jan being one of them, Tamata, I see Jen Odenweller on this call. You know, we do a lot of really good work together because we have this sense of being in the company of friends, learning together, and working together in community.
Thanks, Peg. I really appreciate that. And I can attest to Peg's ability to write grants and to present well. I've sat on the Community Impact Committee for many years for United Way, and Peg has to come every year and present lots. Well, she does present lots of data and a very well written report as she asks for support from the United Way. And so it is truly impressive. I'm very proud that she is crediting Kenyon with that for the research and writing skills. It does make a difference, and she stands out. So let's move on and go to Tamara. What's your through line?
Thank you so much for that, again, for the opportunity to share. So as I was thinking about this question, and I was bouncing it off of my mom, I honestly and genuinely would say that Kenyon gave me a platform. I mean, my experience at Kenyon was literally the groundwork of how to sort of, and I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget, champion that which has not been done before. Because the reply to so many things when we want to change, or we want things to be different, or we want to address things that aren't working, the reply was often, well, we haven't done it like that before. That's not how we do it here. That's not going to work because this is always how we've done it. And so my experience at Kenyon really helped me to develop and to articulate in a clear and strong voice, but also backing it up, as Peg said, with some, making sure you have the data, making sure you have the information, and making sure that you can clearly share your thoughts about this in a way that is intriguing and engaging to people. So challenging the status quo and saying, what is not working and why it's not working, and then proposing a solution to it. I had the luxury and the opportunity to be a part of so many, I don't know, most of folks here don't realize, but between 1989 and 1993, when I graduated, every year we had monumental changes at Kenyon. 1989 was the Commission on Student Life, the whole thing about, well, can we let women live in the historic dorms, or is that, going to create a problem? That's what the whole, they did this whole study on this, right? So I was on that committee, and then I was on the committee for multicultural affairs and searching for new professors and how we were going to tenure more folks of color. And then I was on the committee that helped write the proposal for Snowden Center to be a student multicultural center in the model of Crozier, because I was on the Crozier board, and I said, we need to have something that looks like Crozier, but is specific to this. So all of those things required lots of writing and lots of work and lots of arguments and lots of listen to this, does this make sense? And proposing it and getting in front of people to hear what we could be done, but also being grounded in the reality of what could be done. Not just, I'm a big picture person. I always say that. I have a lot of pie in the sky, like this can be done if everybody can get behind this idea. But there's lots of details and specifics. And although that is not my forte, I always try to get involved with folks who that is their forte, like my friend Peg and lots of other folks at Head Start and at New Directions. But there's a specific experience that was Kenyon related that I said, Kenyon helped me say, it can be done. It can be done, even though your answer is maybe not. It allowed me the opportunity to be kind of a big fish in a small pond. I was the first Black woman to be president of student government. Does that sound ridiculous? 1993, there hadn't been any woman of color that was president of student government? Apparently not, but it was sort of that whole idea that just because it's been done a certain way, you can change that and you can address it as long as you're able to really think through what you want to get done. And we got things done. And I'm really proud of that. And I feel really strongly, and I want to encourage other women to say, don't let people turn you around and say, we can't do it, because that's not really what we usually do. I think that's a common refrain. Maybe some of us can relate to that, but that's my through line, is just to say, well, goodness, just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean we can't do it. All of my work, all of my professional work, and then of course the work for my children, which is a very personal journey. But my son Mick is a trans man, and my other son Roberto is a person with autism. Both of them struggled in our local school district, and some of the issues that our public school system had with providing them the resources that they needed. But for me, it was like, just because you haven't done this before, we're going to do it because it makes sense, not just for my kids, but in the future for every other kid. And Mount Vernon's going to really see how this is going to benefit. And don't get me wrong, and I won't get on the soapbox. It was hard. It was difficult. All of those things are difficult, but it was important. And Kenyon helped me sort of with the tools, my sword and my shield and my my opportunities to get in there and really think through how we're going to make some changes. So
that's so great. Thank you so much, Tamata. And Lisa, let's wind this question up with you. Can you tell us about your through line? You've had several different positions at Kenyon. What connects them?
And I think a through line I share with everybody tonight is, of course, Kenyon. I think of the through line in two ways. I think as far as always feeling a real sense of home base from the 70s until now, Kenyon has been there for me in all different ways. And again, because of people who are here tonight. I have always felt loved, supported, dear friends from here. So that's been very meaningful. But I think then too, in terms of my work, my volunteering, I think what really served me well was, of course, the liberal arts education. I really did feel like I could adapt and keep trying different things. But the course, and Maria Mazzucci, I'm looking at you, the courses that really, I think, really impacted my life were my cultural anthropology courses. And I think it was through there. I've always felt a bit like an anthropologist in my different roles. I love to hear people's stories. I love to listen to where they're coming from, what motivates them, what their issues are. And that, you know, in my work with alumni and parents for so many years, I loved that. I loved hearing from people. And I think that serves, I just think learning to listen and to observe, I think that's been a very high impact thing for me in my life. So I'm grateful to Kenyon, and that is my big through line all the way through life in so many ways.
Wow, nice testament. Thank you so much, Lisa. I think, I don't know about the rest of you, but what I heard a few things. I heard a few through lines as we heard these three women share theirs. One is change happens. Be ready for change. Be a champion of change. Take advantage of your liberal arts education by using it to support your positions and to find the people to work with you on your cause, and have a sense of home base. For many of you, it probably is still Kenyon to some extent. And if it's not Kenyon, where is that sense of home base or that sense of community that keeps you grounded? So thank you all for sharing that. Fascinating. I want to talk a little bit more specifically about philanthropy now, and we can sort of talk about your individual philanthropy if you want, but I also want us to think about the power of philanthropy in a broader way. So you're all in nonprofit organizations that work to create changes in the lives and experiences of community members, whether that's parenting and early childhood education, or K through 12 student success for kids at risk, or preserving and protecting the land and sustaining our environment for future generations. I mean, all of your agencies have this element of creating change within them. It may not feel like that every day, but it's there. I mean, it is definitely there in the work you do. So while this is part of your job, you can't create change alone, right? We have to have others help us. And so I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about how philanthropy is important for communities to help how is philanthropy important for helping our communities achieve these kinds of goals, the kinds of change that you all are working for, and how and why should we engage in these efforts? So again, thinking a little bit more, if you want to use some of your own examples of individual philanthropy or philanthropy that you've been involved with in your own work situation, that's fine, or just think about this in a more sort of philosophical, broader level is also okay. And so, Lisa, I'm going to ask you to start with this one, if you don't mind.
Sure, and I think about that, and really, again, with the people who are here tonight, I think everybody has their story with this. To me, it always comes down to partnerships. I love being in philanthropic work because you're always working as part of a team. I mean, it's never a solo adventure. It's much like being on an athletic team, or that's the joy, I think, of it too. Not only are you making a difference, which is deeply meaningful, but you get to have fun and see change with a group of people. So that I think that's been meaningful in my work at Kenyon. Right now, working with the Philander Conservancy board. These are people who give so generously of that, like you said before, Jan, time, talent, and treasure. I get to work with really talented people who have busy lives, and yet they make time to help us conserve land. And then I have board members and others, and one alum in particular out in Nebraska, who have made it possible through their financial gifts Everything that we do, all the land that we conserve, we have to have funding to work with the landowners and pay them for these easements and do those things. So I think philanthropy is just a great thing to be involved in. And a lot of it's selfish. I just get a big kick out of doing work that's meaningful and then seeing the change that it does bring about. So I think it's a great area.
And your point is an important one, I think, too, Lisa, which is that you really couldn't do your work without philanthropy, without people who were willing to partner with you and help you do this to
spend a lot of time too, right? I mean, I'm always amazed with my board, people give so generously of their time. I mean, because we're a tiny staff, we couldn't get nearly the work done if I didn't have people who are with me side by side in every way, making sure that these things can get done.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. Peg, do you want to talk about how philanthropy is important from sort of your perspective?
Sure. So, from the role of an advocate for children and families in our community, and then also being a mother of a child in the community, we are only as strong as the most at-risk child in the community. When we have children who routinely are living in challenging circumstances, and I speak to Kenyon students quite a bit, and I always have to tell them our average income of a Head Start parent in Knox County is around $16,700 a year for a family of 4, actually averages 4.1. And then I ask what their Kenyon tuition is, which of course I know, but just to help them place and understand the reality of the community, and hopefully to inspire them to get involved, because almost always when I'm speaking to them, I'm speaking to them because of a service learning class or because of their volunteers who volunteer with us. A lot of the engine of the innovative work that we have done has been driven by the fact that our community does support our organization more than most Head Start programs. I didn't mention in my introduction, but Kenyon actually owns a child care center, the Gambier Child Care Center, and Knox County Head Start operates it for them. And about 30% of the children in the building are low income, but about 55% are Kenyon faculty and administration kids, and then some other folks from the Knox County community. And even that building is supported by the generosity of the community and the generosity of Kenyon and the partnership that we have with them. So, kind of going back to Lisa's, partnership matters, and partnership gets things done, and it being willing to see other possibilities, means that we do have the chance to do creative things in our community, some of which might not be possible without the Kenyon connection that we have. So I'm particularly appreciative of that.
If we had lots of time tonight, I'd love to talk more about that. Obviously, in my current role, how Kenyon could be more of a partner across the community. That's a lot of what my office does. So maybe we'll have to do that on a different conversation night, because for now I want to move on to Tamata and hear about her thoughts on philanthropy.
I feel so overwhelmed and privileged because I personally am not able to be as philanthropic as I would like to be based on my own personal experiences, but I also have benefited from the community who at our Kenyon level, and then also in the Knox County community, who care about people such as myself, a single mom with 2 kids with special needs, low income family. Those things matter. What it sends a message is that you matter, I matter, my kids matter, my life matters, the things that I'm doing matter, even though I was working 2 jobs full time and all of these things. There's so many levels and layers that a lot of people don't see or realize or don't feel. because it's not impacting you. So what I want to say about philanthropy in general is that I think the goal, at least in my experience, and if I were able to give hundreds of thousands of dollars to any philanthropic goal, is to recognize that the best opportunity you have is to provide empathic experiences. So let me repeat that: empathic experiences, where a person who may not typically have that opportunity to have an experience, that may put them in another person's shoes. That if you can create those opportunities through your philanthropy, whether it's United Way doing, as we know, Peg, the poverty simulation. This is an experience where people from the community come around to different tables and have a certain amount of money, and you have to figure out how you're going to provide for your family based on all of these experiences. That's an example in my head. That's something that I participated in, but also an experience I had as a student who had just graduated from Kenyon. Someone in our own Kenyon community and several other people, not just this one person, who I'm not able to exactly share that person's name, but that person believed in me enough to be kind enough to invite me to their home. And I had an opportunity to travel in a group called Up With People. Some of you may or may not have heard from them. Up With People. Travel the world. You're in a cast with 150 other kids from around the world. You travel for a year. You get to sing and perform, but you also do all of these other really amazing things. I auditioned for that group in 1995, and someone from our philanthropic Kenyon community provided me the opportunity to travel in that group because they knew about my Kenyon experience, my Kenyon connections, the things that I had done at Kenyon, and knew that that was something that would never really be another opportunity. And so what I want to say about that is people always care. So if there's something that you're doing at Kenyon that means something, and you're able to share something that's important to you, you'd be surprised at how people can. I mean, that changed my life. I traveled the world for a year. I would never have had that experience. I went to 92 cities in 13 different countries, 3 continents in 1 calendar year, because someone at Kenyon who was philanthropic believed in me. And that changed my life. It changed my trajectory in terms of becoming the person that I am today. The other thing I want to quickly mention also are, so providing those empathic experiences, internships. I'm channeling my mom again from the CDO, but Career Development Office, for women to have these experiences in the community, and for philanthropically, for people who are willing to host those experiences and willing to provide opportunities for people to go have these internships in different communities around the country, and connecting with Kenyon and saying, this is something that we can do. And again, I thought I wanted to be an attorney. I had an internship. I discovered that wasn't for me. I care about social justice. After a week of being an attorney, I decided that wasn't for me, but those experiences are important as well. So yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. This was great. I mean, I think one of the things that we had talked about before we got started tonight, and Elisa mentioned, was this notion of time, talent, and treasure. And I think those things came up in this conversation. Tamata, you said something about not really having the ability to be as philanthropic as you want. And yet you very much were talking about being an advocate for your own children and for others in the community. And I think that tied nicely with what Peg talked about in terms of the importance of advocacy, and how that in and of itself, that's time. I mean, that is a type of philanthropy that, we can do, even if we don't have monetary things to give. We do have our time. We have our talents. I mean, if you have gifts of talent that you can share with others. Lisa mentioned having very talented people on her board that help her do the things that she and her board don't have expertise, or she and her staff don't have expertise in. And so certainly, I mean, treasure, money is always helpful. And again, I think Tamata gave such a beautiful example of that, as did Peg, I think. But, Tamata's example of make this life-changing experience possible for a student. And I know that's giving, to the Women's Scholarship Fund at Kenyon. I mean, that's the kind of thing that, can be really, really significant and important. Or as Peg said, give to United Way or some other organization that can help move the needle in the community. So just really wonderful ways to think about philanthropy. Annie, I'm watching the time. Should we go to questions now? Do you have questions from the audience?
I don't have any questions from the audience, but I am changing the settings so that everyone, if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Anybody have a question or want to raise their hand for the audience?
I can't see everybody. So Annie, if you can see, you might have to call on people or people might have to just sort of speak.
I'm scrolling through and I don't see any hands raised yet, Jan, but I can let you
Okay.
know.
Well, I can go, if people want to take us a few minutes to sort of put some questions in the chat or think about it. Let me ask about, let's take this to, the next level of the generations coming. How do we get students interested in giving back to their local communities, whether that's Knox County while they're here or maybe while they're home, but instead of, how do we convince them that they don't have to wait until they have a job where they're making a lot of money and can now give? But how can we help get Kenyon students interested in giving back? And I'll just open this up to anybody, any of the panelists.
Well, I'm going to toot your horn, Jan. I think one of the great improvements at Kenyon has been the development of the Office of Community Partnerships. And I know Jen Odenweiler is on here tonight too. I think that in terms of what will help this community, I think Kenyon and the other two educational institutions, there are a lot of resources here, but I think the challenge has been getting people connected. And I think especially for students to find their way into the community so they know what those opportunities are and that women and others can mentor them in these roles. I think it's just getting them involved so they have that, we learned that. I was lucky in church. I had a woman who was a Sunday school teacher and kind of took me under her wing and really kind of taught me at that young age about how to give back and why it was important. And like you, Tamata, I've never been able to do a lot financially. And I don't feel bad about that anymore. I have been, I feel good about the time I've been able to give, will continue to give. But I think that's one way to think about it.
Yeah, thank you for that shout out, Lisa. And again, lots of kudos to Jen Odenweiler, who helped us launch this 5 to 6 years ago. Jennifer, it looks like you have a hand raised, I believe.
Yeah, first of all, thank you to everybody. It's just been really nice to hear from the group and I look at a lot of Zoom meetings where it's mostly men, so it's kind of nice to see a bunch of friendly women faces. So I guess I'm trying to I'm formulating my question as I'm talking, so forgive me, but I am a law professor and I run a clinic for law students where we're representing poor people in a variety of different kinds of contexts. And one of the things that I'm curious to think about from the Kenyon student perspective, or even as we're raising our children, or we're thinking ourselves about getting involved in a community level, is I'd love to hear your thoughts about how do you train others or train yourselves to engage with communities where you didn't necessarily grow up in that context. So you've got different socioeconomic backgrounds, you've got different racial or ethnic or religious backgrounds, political, don't even get me started on that. And so I guess I confront that a lot as a professor, and I also try to be mindful of it in my own practice of, I guess it's hard for me. I don't like to be, I'm not somebody who just writes a check. I like to be, if I'm gonna be giving financially, I also want to be engaged. And so I'm curious, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on that front, about how do you kind of bridge those divides? Also, how do you kind of become, mindful or train others about even just assumptions that we bring to the table about the communities that we work with. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, does anybody want to start this one?
Well, I can chime in just to start. Even though I'm from Knox County, I've often mostly felt like an outsider because my values were not the majority values. I think it's really important to surround yourself with allies. So your first goal and job, allies, comrades, whatever you want to say, is to spend some energy and time working with people who are a diverse group. So, a friend of mine, Drew McKay, and I came up with the idea way back in 2008 to develop something called the Diversity Coalition of Knox County. That was sort of our foundational idea, let's just get as many people on board with the idea that diversity is good. And it's not just about, our progressive sort of liberal leaning thing. It's really we want businesses to be on board. We want, all of the major agencies to kind of recognize that diversity is valuable. So it was really, honestly, Jen, going to each place individually and saying, this is our mission statement. This is what we're really doing. This is why we care. We have kids. We want things to be better for them. And I mean, that was prompted by, an incident that happened in that year. So we had a rally. It was around a Hispanic boy who had been attacked in the community. So we had a rally, but after that, it was what people were what more can we do? So there was an opportunity to sort of build an allyship. So that's my suggestion. I don't know, Peg, Lisa, do you have other thoughts?
I would say, and I do this when I speak to Kenyon students who are volunteering with us. I don't want them to look at our children and families with pity. I want them to be strengths-based. I want them to see, I will often say to moms in our program, you got up and came here today and brought your child to school under unimaginable circumstances that I might not have gotten out of bed for, just really reminding folks truly how strong people who survive living on the margins of our society are. They are really strong people. And their children are beautiful people. And we just have to be able to see the humanity in everyone that we are dealing with. And I won't lie and say that's easy for me to do every day, because it's not always easy. We use a philosophy called conscious discipline. Tamata is familiar with it in our program. And one of the principles is to assume positive intent when interacting with folks. And again, hard in this world at times, but it's amazing if you shift your perspective to that, to assuming positive intent, how much it changes your interactions. We have to help our staff understand, and certainly our volunteers understand, that in challenging circumstances, many of our kids and our parents are survivors of trauma, and they're responding from their brain state, usually in their survival state. So they're living in their survival state, and they're not necessarily processing things in a cognitive way that we might expect. They're in the language of conscious discipline. They're not using their frontal lobe. They're stuck in their brainstem. And when you're serving an at-risk population, if you can look at it that way and recognize it's not personal to you, it's not about you if someone's losing their mind. It's about where they are in their brain at that moment. And you can't lecture, and of course, if you have children, you know this too, you cannot lecture a child out of a temper tantrum. It does not work, ever, ever, ever. You get them calm first, you help them feel safe, you help them feel calm, then you teach the lesson. And I think that that is the case. And that is I've always said, I want to teach I develop a conscious college training, because, these are skills that would benefit college students. We're struggling with mental health, learn to calm your body. Let me teach you a breathing exercise. let's sing Tony Chestnut. And, and I've done that even with the Deeks at a Sean Kelly party years ago. Sorry, I think I got off track, Jen.
That's all right. Thank you so much, Peg. This is actually a really great place, I think, to end, a really sort of positive note about thinking about how we can sort of shift perspectives and, sort of shift the conversations. And really, I think that positive intent, I think, is so important, assuming positive intent in these, particularly in these days now, where that's really sometimes very, very hard to do. But I do need to turn this back over to Una, but I just want to say thank you all so much. What a fun conversation. And I hope you all in the audience can see why my job is really fun most days, because I get to work with these folks or people like them. And it's very uplifting. So thank you all. And Una, I will turn this back over to you for the wrap up.
Wow, what a fantastic evening. I cannot thank Jan and our panelists enough for this engaging and enlightening conversation. Kenyon women have played a critical role in our beloved alma mater's history, and we will continue to make a significant impact on its future. On behalf of myself and the Kenyon Women Giving Back Steering Committee, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us and being a part of this conversation tonight. This series will continue in person, and yes, you heard me right, in person at the college over reunion weekend. Kenyon Women Giving Back will be co-sponsoring the reunion keynote address with the Center of the Study of American Democracy. The speakers will be Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, class of '97, and Republican political strategist and publisher of the conservative news and opinion website, The Bulwark, Sarah Longwell, class of 2002. The mission of Kenyon Women Giving Back is to celebrate and amplify our impact on the college and on the world by building connections and support. Our gifts to the Kenyon Fund provide much needed support for all of the things we love about Kenyon. I'm therefore pleased to announce that the Kenyon Women Giving Back Steering Committee is challenging Kenyon alumna to support our Kenyon Women's Annual Scholarship, which since its inception in 2020 has provided over $200,000 in current dollars to Kenyon women students. The committee will match all gifts of $2,500 or less to the annual scholarship up to $38,500. We've set a goal of 100 gifts to the scholarship fund by June 30th, and we hope you'll join us. If you aren't ready to make a gift today at gift.com, Give 43022 fundraising challenge, which will take place on April 29th and 30th as Kenyon and Gambier celebrate 43022 Day, 43022. Get it? More information about that event and ways to participate will be headed to your postal mailbox soon. Finally, we would love your feedback on this event, suggestions for future event topics, and ideas for how to continue to engage Kenyon women. We'll follow up with an email that includes a survey and a link for that Kenyon Fund gift. You can also send your ideas directly to Annie Gordon, our moderator, at gordon3@kenyon.edu. Thank you again and have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Great work.
Unmute. Bye, folks.
Are
Thank you. Thank you for
Thanks,
inviting me.
Everybody.
we
Really
out?
good.
Annie? Are we good?
Thank
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Tamara. You guys were wonderful.
Thank
So
you.
good to
It's
hear
good
from
to
you.
see
I'll be
everybody.
in touch. I'll be in touch soon. Thank
Right.
you.
Bye, Peg. Miss you.
Bye, guys.